For Drumheller-Stettler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Presently, this government's wildlife species plans are old or non-existent. Plans for important interrelated species that affect caribou, like moose, do not exist. Mule deer plans are from 1989, black bear plans from 1993, and wolves, a key species interacting with caribou, 1991. Minister, how can you claim to be making science-based decisions for caribou when management plans for those interrelated species are decades old, even non-existent?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The reason why there are no range plans required under legislation for species that are not at risk is because they're not at risk. So black bear and moose and other those populations are stable. In fact, they are not listed. So we are required to file range plans with the federal government under the requirements of the Federal Species at Risk Act. This is not a choice. That is the law of the land.
First supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the front bench and the back bench, given that this current range management plan for Spokane and Lapiche caribou herds include government poisoning of moose carcasses and aerial wolf kills in order to save that caribou herd, and given that your submission to the federal government is over 200 pages long, but there is barely any mention of predator control beyond talk of expanding this into other regions. Minister, has there been any research encouraging local trappers and First Nations people to help manage the population of wolves instead of your present culling methods? And if not, why is this not detailed in the interactive plan?
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Minister.
The short answer, Mr. Speaker, is yes, we are involving the AWN in those predator control programs. Mr. Speaker, and there are a number of things that Environment and Parks has undertaken for some years in order to protect this federally listed species. Those are requirements under the Act to maintain the health of the herds, Mr. Speaker, about which we know a lot more after 2 years of careful work on this file.
Second supplemental.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. Given that a Quebec study showed that bears had a large effect on caribou calf mortality, and obviously we have a lot of bears in the caribou ranges here in Alberta, and given that biologists say that there has been little study about predators other than wolves and their effects on caribou, and given that the effects of bear predation in your plan is almost non-existent. Minister, if your plan is science-based, where is the science on bear mortality on caribou calves?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And range planning is a very complex process. There are about 15 ranges that we have to plan for, Mr. Speaker, and they're multi-year initiatives. And that is why we have asked the federal government for some assistance on this matter in terms of ability to know more about the health of the herds, more about predation and so on. There's a robust amount of monitoring and science, in fact, that is being undertaken by our department, and will continue to do so, at least under this government that values science.